Mr Mayor, what involvement have you had with LLDC and West Ham about trying to secure a naming rights deal for the London Stadium? And are you prepared to sort of step in here and try and work with West Ham and LLDC to secure this? Because we had a very good session with Lynn, and we heard very clearly from her point of view. We've since had extensive correspondence from West Ham, which sets out that they have wanted a fresh approach to the ownership, operation and control of the London Stadium. They have offered to help with naming rights and so on. Now, I realise, you know, both sides, if I can put it like that, are sort of playing a certain role. But actually, doesn't it make sense to get everyone round the table and see if we can use West Ham's professional skills and so on to try and get that deal, because that helps the taxpayer here? Well,
Chairman, with your permission, can I begin by passing on my condolences to the family of David Gold, the joint co-chairman of West Ham, who sadly passed away last night. We know his commitment and love of West Ham. He's a lifelong fan, poor soul, of West Ham. But he saw the glory days, the Bobby Moore days and the FA Cup winning days, and he invested a lot in that club, in that part of London, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the Assembly as well, if you don't mind, and saying we pass on our condolences to Mr Gold's family.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That's agreed and noted.
In relation to the stadium naming rights, I'm more than happy to get involved as and when. You've got to be careful in relation to not cutting across the work of the Chief Commercial Officer, LLDC, and indeed West Ham. I've seen the correspondence that has been copied to all and sundry, and you've got to be a bit careful. I say this with affection towards those running West Ham, as well as LLDC, that sometimes you can play to a gallery. And so, and also, we don't know, you know, there are also differences in relation to, and money's been involved in relation to litigation, arbitration and so forth. And I think the point that the LLDC representatives would want to make is, and I think it's a point made in one of the letters I've read, is if we could resolve those issues first, it makes it much easier to work collegially with the football club. That being said, we also got to be careful not to scare away somebody potentially thinking about being a sponsor by giving the impression we're at daggers. We really aren't. West Ham have made huge progress working with us in the last few years. Since when I first became mayor, relations weren't great. The operation, they've improved hugely with E20 and West Ham. If you remember, Senator Pidgeon, the conversation we'd have about the cost of moving the seats every year.
Oh, extraordinary.
You know, again, we've really worked with West Ham. We've been great. I know West Ham are really happy about the colours around behind the goals. It was a real bone of contention with the fans as well. Again, working closely with West Ham, we've really worked well there. West Ham have been great celebrating the 10th anniversary of the park this year. So I don't want an impression to be given that we're at daggers with West Ham. But you'll appreciate that, and those who are potential sponsors will appreciate there are often, you know, agreements to be reached between us and West Ham. We couldn't agree a stadium naming right deal without West Ham's cooperation and partnership, and so it's got to be done collegially with West Ham. And so I know there's a temptation for me to be doing the cold calling, getting potential sponsors in. I would trust the judgment of our officers. So, for example, I'm very happy to negotiate with Major League Baseball to get games here. I'm really happy to negotiate with NFL to get games here. We've got 3 games here, and there are other examples with London and partners with big employers and so forth. But you've got to trust your officials to let you know when it is they want you to get involved. I'm more than happy to get involved as and when I'm advised the right time to do so.
Yeah, I absolutely take what you're saying and agree with that. But it just feels that there are possible issues with the relationship. It is improving, but actually, you know, it's quite clear in the correspondence we've had, West Ham are going to the market shortly for a new primary sponsor. It would be potentially a good opportunity, and given they have expertise in this field, and we have tried as a public sector for 10 years to get sponsorship for the stadium, every year, and I really respect Lynn and the team, I really do. I think they're fantastic. They come and say, I'm the most positive ever, we're going to get a sponsor, and then we come back a year later and we still haven't got anywhere near. And I just wonder, could you even just facilitate getting everyone together to look at the, you know, what are the options, what's the sort of timescales, just to give it that impetus, which you can do from your role as mayor?
I'll bring the Chief of Staff, who's again itching to come in, Chair. But look, you've seen the press reports today and speculation around what happens to the late Mr. Gold's share of the club. You'll have seen in the media, acquisition of shares in relation to West Ham. That's a regular occurrence with a football club in the Premier League, I'm afraid. But I take your point about the link between a shirt sponsor and the club. It's not the case, by the way, that all Premier League clubs have that link between the shirt sponsor and all the rest of it and stuff. But I hear your point loud and clear, and I'm more than happy to get involved as and when.
I just think it might be good to get together at this stage. I'm not saying you then get involved in the micro, just to give it that strategic direction and a bit of focus, because it feels like it's going on. If you've got something specific to add, David.
I really want to. I mean, the first thing to say is that it's been an incredibly difficult few years. This is not the only Premier League stadium that doesn't have naming rights where it's been sought. It's a difficult market. The second thing to say is to recognise, if you're West Ham and you're thinking about sponsorship, you're thinking holistically about your assets. So you're trying to think about the ground you play in, you think about your training ground, you're thinking about your shirts, you think of some of your other collateral. If you're LLDC, you are again thinking holistically. So the stadium's very important, but there are other assets in the park, and LLDC's done a lot of work about where the value is and understanding where the interest might be, particularly given, like I say, stadium naming rights. It's more complicated, and the concept that I think sometimes people have, where you say, all right, you pay me X million pounds, I put your logo on the stadium. Actually, if it ever was like that, it is not like that anymore. It's a very different world. So, there are certain things in the concession agreement about how LLDC and West Ham should work together around it. We do want to build on that. We do also want to support LLDC in doing the right thing for the taxpayer, and so we're keen for them to work more closely together. But as I say, there are certain other things that will help further improve the relationship that we need to get sorted.
I accept that, but I think it'd be good just to get a little focus on this.